welcome. We have our beginning for chapter 4, debugging and error handling. You know, it's hard to choose which chapter to begin this on because it really should be chapter 1, but you have to be able to write some code before you can debug it. So chapter 4 seems pretty good. But I mean, essentially, there's no way that you can make it without debugging. You're just, you know, with any kind of programming, especially when you're mixing so many technologies, when you're doing web development. So it's essential, and also because of the very nature of Python or of JavaScript as being an interpreted language from a C++ backend created executable, it's fairly error proof, meaning you can write crappy code and it'll just happily ignore it and go about its way. So then what that does is it causes problems with you being able to actually find where the issue is, because you don't know what's working or what's not, essentially. And then you get into the guess and check method, and then you get into the stupid guess check print method, and then you start doing print all over the place, and then you start doing taking all the code out, guess check, hash, hack and slash, bring in a little code at a time methods. When often, sometimes the best method is just to set a breakpoint and see what's going on. So that's what this chapter is about. And it's actually pivotal for your success in the future in IT or anything to do with programming and working with source code or talking with people that work with source code. And if you're going into programming full time, literally, if you want a social life, if you want to be married before you're 35, 40 or whatever, use the debugger. You know, really. You learn a lot more and you spend less time. Okay, so let's get into that. I'm done with my soapbox. These are the few things that we're gonna do. I'm not gonna get into try catch. I mean, I'm gonna go through these PowerPoints, and then I want to get in and start having some fun. So let's not get too bogged down in PowerPoint. I'm gonna try to stop myself. I'll look at the time. Okay, so bugs. We all know what bugs are. There's two types, really. Your mistakes and they're always your mistakes, because, as I say, there's only one person ever working against you when you're programming, and that's yourself. So you start learning about what mistakes you'll make and start managing your workflow and not making those mistakes. There's just certain things that I just don't do because I know I'm going to screw up, and I have a flow that I go through to make sure that those problems don't happen. And also, then when you start knowing where those problems can happen, you can start solving problems by design, because everything is always about errors in programming. Giving it the right instructions to complete. So you got the syntax errors where the code just won't work. You got a logic error where the code will work, but it won't do what you intended it to do. Meaning it works fine, it doesn't crash the program, it does what you told it to do, but it doesn't have the right outcome. We call that a logic error because it still works, but with the syntax errors, that line of code won't work, and sometimes if it's really bad enough, JavaScript might just totally quit and not even decide to ignore and keep on going. It might just decide to quit with the whole script and be done with it and move on. So you also have things like the window alert. That's the guess check print method, which I still use, and then you got into debugging within the browser, which is probably the best method. With a Chrome browser, debugging is essentially a lot more mainstream and in front of the actual application that's doing the interpretation of your code and rendering it on the screen. So with Chrome, it's kind of like going to the horse's mouth, as you would say, and that's the way you want to probably debug. With NetBeans, you can put in the NetBeans connector and have it all in one area, which I like too, and I do. But often the NetBeans connector and those plugins just kind of screw up and cause more problems than they're worth. And also, they're not as good at finding errors as you would going right into the browser and looking at it. Because the browser is what does the job of interpreting the text and actually doing what you tell it to do. It's not your editor. So we'll be looking into that today. Runtime errors. Runtime errors are when you try to, some of them referencing variables outside of scope. Runtime errors of undefined variables. Runtime errors are also what I also call logic errors. In this example where you have your source that you can look at, you can start seeing where you have some problems with red lines and X's, and you also have an error output that you can look at. So we are going to get in and we are going to debug the Tuba Pharma equipment page. And what we're going to debug. We're going to do the hands-on, and we're going to go in and get into actually detecting these errors and actually using it. Because you can read all about it, but because this is also a skill. It's not like you have to know how to get to all these areas and do all that stuff. So that's what we're going to concentrate on today. I'm not going to sit here and go through this whole thing and just read everything off. So let's get into breakpoints. One thing about breakpoints is you need to make sure if you put a breakpoint in an event listener function, you got to activate the event listener function to reach the breakpoint. So it's activated. We may see some of that today. Okay, so let's bring up, let's get right into it. Let's just bring up what we need to debug. And what we'll do is we'll create a folder for it. And we will bring up, let's see, we'll bring the code in, create a folder for it, bring the code in, do a NetBeans project, and then I can edit it from NetBeans while I'm debugging it from Chrome. That's kind of what I'm going to do. Okay? So this is going to be for CS250, 250, CH4. That's good enough for me. Okay, and now let's go ahead and get that code that's for our instructions from our assignment of 4-1. So let's look at our assignment now. And I'm going to go ahead and get this website up for the book. It's just what I use for my book. I think I'm already actually signed in. I can just go right in and open it up. Yeah. So we've got, we just got done with my Python video. So now we're going to do this one. And this is going to be chapter 4, hands-on 1. So we're going to go for debug handling, and let's bring it down, head on down to the last bit. Case projects, hands-on projects, there we go. Okay, we're going to want to get the code for 4-1 and get that one moving and get you guys moving along on your challenge. In this project, you will finish an application, and you need some debugging work. So you're going to have a preview as shown in figure 4-30. Okay. So use your code editor, open project 4.1. Okay, let's go ahead and let's get into that. And then I'm not going to go, is it add a script element to load the, okay, so that's the first bug. We don't have a script element to load it in, so that we're going to have to do some of that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the code for 4-1. I believe I have that available. Classes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I teach way too many different classes. That's why I'm always got 7 languages on my mind. Okay, so we are in JavaScript. Okay. All right, so here we go. 250. We're in 250. We need. Oh, we're not doing the solutions. I'm not going to cheat today. So today we're going to go ahead and, oh no, we're going to have to go to the in-class code because it looks like, oh, there it is, right there. Okay. let's look at the instructions and see. I think the in-class code is different than what I was thinking, so I think we need to go to the website again to get the right stuff. All right, modules. It's probably, I probably got it. Student data files. There it is. Okay. There we go. We're at chapter 4. Bring it into our folder, and then we're going to start having fun. You guys are probably following the same step as me right now. Okay, there is JS4 project 1. Okay, we got 4-1 right there. So I'm going to take that code. I'm going to copy it out of the zip file. And I'm going to bring it down into my project code, which is CS250 chapter 4. Okay. Now I can just run this in NetBeans right now. Or not NetBeans, but in Notepad to debug it. But I'm going to use NetBeans to edit it. And I don't have to use NetBeans. I could use Visual Studio Code. I could use any text editor I want. In fact, I wouldn't even need to add a project. I could just, but projects make it so much nicer to work in. But I could just load the files in and tell it to run the files. So I'm going to just open those files without doing a project this time, because you really don't need one. What we'll do is we'll go into the chapter and just load the files directly into NetBeans and edit them without a project folder, which is fine. We don't need the project part of NetBeans. We can just have the file. It looks like I need to open a file, so I'm going to use this plus for the file. Not a new one, though. I'm going to file, open file. Right there. That's the one I want. Open file, and we have it. It looks like in chapter 4, where we put them. I think I can select multiples with Control or Shift. There we go. And then I say open. It was Control. It was Control, not Shift. Okay, so now these files are open, and now I can edit them. And if I just want to run it, I can just right-click here and say Run File. I think. Yeah, I should be able to say just Run File. Or just double-click on it in the folder when I'm done with it, when I'm done editing it. I'll just double-click on it and run it in here. In fact, I'm going to do it that way right now. I'm just going to double-click on it. So I'm showing you this way because, I showed you projects and projects, that's good, but you don't actually need them. So this is us debugging. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go in here to more tools, and I'm going to go to developer tools, and then I'm going to look at sources, and I'm going to see here the first problem. I don't see a JS file, which means that we're not including the JS file in our HTML. That's our first bug. Because the NetBeans should have been able to read it and see the JS file. Since I'm opening up the sources for the page, and since NetBeans doesn't have that JS file, that means that it's not being included into the HTML page, and you need to include it. And preferably, you need to include it at the end. Not at the beginning like your stupid book. Yeah, they might have some new updates where they do multiple passes, but no, put it at the end. I'm going to stop talking now about that. It just drives me insane when they do stupid stuff like that. Okay, we don't really have any source to debug other than the HTML file here. And we look at the HTML file and we see the source. Oh! Your stupid book gives you instructions to move this down first because it's the first error. Yeah, okay, your book is really good, but I'm still going to complain about it. It's actually the best JavaScript book I've ever seen. It's been around for decades, Web Warriors. Okay, so they give instructions to do this in like chapter 3, and nothing works. And then in chapter 4 for debugging, they say the first error you need to correct is this one. Literally, you look at the book, and that's what they tell you here. Use your code editor to move it. Okay, well, or maybe they tell you something else. But that's our first error. So we gotta that's one thing that we've got to do is we got to go into that HTML file, and here is the HTML file, and I'm going to say run this script. I'm going to say this. Let me zoom in on here so you can see kind of what I'm doing. This thing that, you know, when you include your script at the beginning, it causes problems, but it may not be the reason why we're not seeing the script. So the number one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into the body. Then I'm going to click save. Then I'm going to go back to my browser that has this file open. This file that I'm editing right now open. Even though it's in a separate thing altogether, I'm going to go back to my browser and I'm going to go to the page that I'm actually currently debugging and working on, which is this one. And I'm going to hit reload, and we should see this source change. We'll see this go down because I edited it in NetBeans. So I'm going to reload it to make the change happen. Now you see there that source went from line 18 all the way down to there. Now we should start seeing something close to the source. And for some reason, I don't know why, we are not seeing 4-01.js. So now we need to look at the code, make sure everything is spelled correctly, and get our source in there so that we can actually double click on it and see it inside of this folder in NetBeans. It should be seeing or coming up and be seen in there. So let's look at the spelling first. Project 04-01.js. Okay, I'm not going to spend the time trying to solve this problem with you waiting on me. I'm going to pause, solve the problem, and then tell you what the problem was. I'll be right back. Okay, so one thing that the reason why I noticed that this JS file is not reading is because when it's trying to grab the JS file in NetBeans and it's interpreting it, or not NetBeans, but Chrome, it should show up in here. It should be in part of the sources for our HTML file, which means that it's not reading it, which means that there's something wrong with the file. It's either not in the folder or there might be some typing error. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the file, and I'm going to look, and this is what I usually do is I just say the hell with it. I'm not even worried about the typing. I'm just going to go in here, and this is the file I want to open. And I'm just going to copy the text. Literally just copy it and say, oh, with it. Hey, if there's an O that looks like a 0, you never know. So I just copy it. And then I'm going to go back here and I'm going to paste it. And I'll paste it here. And I notice there's a difference there. Because I hit Control-Z to undo, and that was what it was. So that's the error. That's the problem. Control-V. It's misspelled with an _txt. Okay, so now we can test. Make sure you do your save all. Go back to the browser since we're not doing projects, which you would do anyways. And then reload. And oh my goodness, look at that. My JS file shows up, which means that NetBeans sees it and it's included as part of our code and we're ready to rock and roll. Cool. What could else go wrong? Well, let's try everything because this literally, they literally set up these things that they were totally messed up. And you have to go in and debug them. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to just set a breakpoint and I'm just going to walk through it all and see what happens. So I'm going to put in I'm going to put in some numbers that they're putting in here. And then I'm going to set a breakpoint. But the thing is this breakpoint should have been invoked at some time, which means that it already ran when the page was loaded, and we're stuck with working with some kind of event handler. Or calc total should be done with an event handler, which means that you're probably going to add this is probably more of a setup issue, but oh wait, no, because when you change it, you'll have an event handler. It looks like it's changing it automatically. see. There they are. There's the code. That's where it's adding the event handler. Let's go back to NetBeans. Let's open up the project text and then let's get into it a little bit. Okay. And we have, it looks like we have this count total actually working for us. Doesn't seem to be doing too bad. There might be some issues with it. There might be a logic error that you need to find. But these, I mean, from testing it, we can look and see what happens is what is happening in count total. And that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to set a breakpoint so you can start adding some watches and stuff. And then I'm going to let you loose on the rest of the assignment. Okay, so let's bring up Chrome. And let's set a breakpoint. But what we're going to do is this runs, we can set a breakpoint here, and this runs when the page is loaded. But the real action doesn't happen until you put in some data. And that is when this count total function is called for whenever you change or click on this bar. So to track things that are going on, I would put a breakpoint inside of count total because it's pretty much maybe where all the problems would be that your instructions may have. So then I can examine what's going on in count total. And then what I would have to do is I would have to go over here. I don't think I need to reload. I just need to change a value. And if I change a value, that's going to automatically invoke that count total because these two boxes that we have it on change with the count total event handler. So I'm going to put change this value to 224 inside of here, and then this is going to break right here, and I'm going to be able to examine it. At least I thought it was going to break. There it is. Okay, as soon as I went off of, I put the 2 on it, but I had to go out of focus for the on change event to actually happen. When I went out of focus on the actual, when I clicked away after I made the change and I clicked over in this box, then the on change got called for that number being changed. So now the on change event that we're looking for is when we change this number. Then what we can do is we can do things like look at our local scope and see inside of our local scope some of the values that we're working with locally as we're stepping through our code. Now you can also, the local scope helps really good for you to keep track of things that are going on locally inside of a particular scope, like inside of a function. But sometimes you want to keep track of global values, like these values, WTG box. You may want to actually add a watch for that. So what you could do is you could add a watch for that, and since a global value, you would be something that would actually have a value that would be for most of the scope of your program. That may be what you want to do. But you know what is actually better is I believe it would be WTG box, WGT box dot value is what we're really interested in. Let's see if that will actually work. Oh, there it is, 224. Nice. Okay. So we have something to watch. We're doing okay. So now we can start examining this code, and we can look at these local variables here in the scope drop down. And every variable that comes up locally within this function is gonna pop up in this window. You don't have to add a watch for it. So watches are mostly better for variables that are out of scope that you want to keep track of globally for the whole program, because you don't really need to add a watch for a variable that's only declared and used in a function, because that'll just show up in your locals or your autos. In other software development environments, they call them auto variables, automatic variables, because they automatically go on the stack, which is a type of your RAM. So you can step through here, look at total cost. You can see it change, and you can track everything. And I hit the wrong button there, but I hit play, which means continue until the next one. So I could set a breakpoint here, hit play, and it'll skip all these guys and stop here and wait. Or I can be here and just do one line at a time, so I can examine kind of what's going on and see what actually happens and look at the values and see if, hey, what is document.html? If you misspelled this somehow, if you had this misspelled and you added it as a watch, it would be like variable undefined. So that is how you can look and you can validate that it's actually getting you a good value. And with, especially when you're mixing 3 different technologies, and not only that, but different editing windows, because we're in NetBeans and also editing in or debugging in Chrome. So we're working with CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. And here's the thing: is it gets worse, because when you get to server-sided scripting, you're working with now 4 languages and 2 or to 3 different editors probably. So you got to get really good at knowing how to work around inside of a project folder, or a website folder, or just your working environment. So that is, I can continue heading step over until it's done, or just hit play and it finishes the run of the calc total call, which is what our event is on. Okay, so I got you a good start on this. What I want you to do is to go ahead and finish out the instructions for your assignments. Make sure you keep debugging in Chrome. It's going to save you time in the long run, and it's also going to teach you a little bit more about how to work in multiple environments without being stuck with a I don't know anything because the project is doing everything for me mentality, which I try to break as much as I can. So start working with that project awareness, because the project is just a collection of files that you can use multiple different technologies to edit. It's not the project file that NetBeans puts in there. It's just your folder with your text, your code, and that's it. Or it could be your NetBeans project, which is totally cool with me. Okay, guys. Until the next video, take care. Bye-bye.